participants directly into the private rental market. We help our program participants and our residents at our properties to build assets and wealth through our assets and wealth building programs and resident services, connecting them to the right services and opportunities in our communities. Our third line of business that we work within is we're affordable housing developers. We own, manage, and develop affordable housing communities throughout the Gorge service area, ranging from Cascade Locks all the way out east in eastern Quickstart County to Roosevelt. And behind me is one of our properties here in Carson, Washington. And we're actively working on developing additional affordable housing units throughout our service area. And our fourth line of business that we work within to promote and administer affordable housing solutions is through home ownership programs. We work with current and future homeowners to realize their goals and dreams of becoming a homeowner or remaining in their home as a homeowner, whether that's through down payment assistance administration or foreclosure avoidance. We operate a variety of programs to help those in home ownership and that are seeking to become homeowners. And we're actively working to develop more opportunities for affordable home ownership in our community. So thanks for the opportunity for the introduction here, Kenny, this afternoon. And again, for those of you in attendance, thanks for participating with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Joel. And I'll kick it over to Leslie now.
Thank you, Kenny. I'm Leslie Naramore, and I am the Executive Director of Washington Gorge Action Programs, which is the community action agency for Klickitat and Skamania counties. We have a variety of services for our low-income residents, but I think the services that we provide that relate to what we're talking about today are our 2 emergency homeless shelters and our housing programs, which work with low-income people to get them stabilized and into housing and to be able to keep that housing and to hopefully prevent houselessness. And I am going to give it back over to Kenny. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. And again, Kenny LaPoint, Mid-Columbia Community Action Council Executive Director. We run similar programs to Leslie. We're just across the river. So we work across the river. We work in Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties. I'm going to give a little shameless plug for my agency. I've been with the agency since November of last year. We've gone through some significant changes as an agency. We have a new website, a new strategic plan, new branding. Please visit our website at mccac.com. You can check out our strategic plan on there. Big emphasis for us is that we're entering a new era of doing our work in the community and leading that with equity. So I encourage you to take a look at our strategic plan. I'll also note that Mid-Columbia Community Action is working on some housing development itself, targeted towards permanent supportive housing, which is housing that has supportive services that help the residents achieve success in housing that they may not otherwise achieve if they didn't have stable housing. So we're happy to do that. We're excited to do that. Hopefully we can bring 70, 75 new affordable rental homes to the Dalles here in the next couple of years. We're also in process of building a navigation center in the Dalles, which is where our shelter in Wasco County will be co-located with our offices, among other agencies' offices, so we can provide more of a holistic approach to service provision. We're really excited about that. We're thankful to the legislature for giving us $1.5 million to do that. And I also want to mention that there will be a time later on, as you can see in the agenda, for Q&A. So save your questions up for later on. We'll have plenty of great conversation here leading up till then. But with that, I would like to turn this over to Executive Director of Oregon Housing and Community Services, Margaret Salazar. I had the privilege of serving under Director Salazar for, I think, 6 years, 5 years, which was an awesome time. Margaret has led Oregon Housing and Community Services into a new era for themselves. has done a great job overseeing that agency during very difficult times, during COVID-19, during significant wildfire response, and through the development of Oregon's statewide housing plan, which has been leading OHCS's direction over the past few years and into the future. So I'm excited to have Margaret here as both a former colleague and a friend. Excited that she has taken leadership in housing in the state of Oregon, and would like to turn it over to her so we can hear about what's going on at Oregon Housing and Community Services and how our communities can take advantages of the resources and priorities that Oregon Housing and Community Services is looking at.
Thank you so much, Kenny. And it's wonderful to see all of you. I've had the pleasure of collaborating with many of you. And in case it's not obvious, some of the best leaders in the state are in the Gorge. And I think, that is exemplified today with the collaboration that we're seeing. I'm also partial to your region because I'm from the Gorge. I grew up on a cherry orchard in Odell, and still consider the Hood River area my home. So just, obviously watching very closely the strides that you all are making. Coming to you today wearing a hat as an agency head in state government. And so what I'd love to do is just kind of give you a broad brushstroke of some of the things that we're looking at in state government and the path forward and the opportunities that lie ahead for us to work together in the next couple of years toward the long-term recovery. So before I start the brief PowerPoint presentation that I have today, just reflecting a little bit on this moment, I think as you heard Kenny mention, Oregon has had a housing crisis for many years. It is a structural crisis, a lack of supply and a lack of availability of housing, particularly for the lowest income members of our communities. Both, the farm workers and the ag workers that make our economy thrive, the preschool workers that we all rely upon for our economy and for the health of our families, and so many more just simply cannot afford the availability of housing that is in place in our communities. There's just not a supply there, particularly for folks, the working folks that make our communities run at the 50% of median income and below. And so when we put out our statewide housing plan vision a few years ago, we really called out that structural lack of housing availability and the fact that Oregon has one of the highest rates in the country of unsheltered homelessness. We are in the top 4 and 5 states nationally in the share of our community members experiencing homelessness that are living unsheltered. And that's also not counting all the folks that are doubled up and couch surfing. So we have a lot of work to do as a state. This is a long time problem, and we're not going to fix it overnight. So that's the hard news. The good news is that we laid out a really bold roadmap with some big articulated goals in a way that we never had before. And we've been able to see folks really coalescing around that vision, which has been really exciting and gratifying. I think folks really wanted to be part of this. And a few of the themes I want to hit on today, kind of big picture, and then I'll go into some details that I think will resonate with all of you. So we had a big goal in our 5-year statewide housing plan around producing more affordable housing. And that's affordable housing, again, at the income levels of kind of folks that are working every day to make our communities thrive. 60% of area median income is, it's a lot of jargon, but that's typically the federal and state affordable housing resources really go to that income level. And so we had a goal of creating 25,000 affordable rental homes in a 5-year period. We have dramatically surpassed our benchmarks toward that goal. We are, I think, 2/3 of the way through that goal, and we're only 2 years into the plan, which is a testament to folks on this call, and their grit and determination to getting affordable housing over the finish line. And we're so grateful for that. And there's a lot more work to be done. We also had a particular call out in our statewide housing plan, and we'll touch on this today, around small towns and rural communities. We know that getting housing supply moving in small towns and rural communities is a unique challenge. We know that the economics are tough. The deals that don't always pencil out. It's just as hard and expensive to build in rural communities as it is in urban communities. And we also know that local policymakers like yourselves need support to be able to do that groundwork at the front end of the development process to lay the foundations, literally and figuratively, for new housing in your community. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but we have a goal in our plan of really ramping up our production of affordable housing in small towns and rural communities. We have had a lot of success, and I'll share some examples of that today. And then the other goal I wanted to call out specifically is around equity and racial justice. We all know that the housing crisis is hitting our BIPOC communities harder than the general population, than our white communities. We need to be sensitive to that, lean into that, not shy away from that fact, and make sure that we're engaging voices around the table to help us build out of this crisis in an equitable fashion. And so we have some very particular ways that we're looking at that work across the continuum. We at Oregon Housing Community Services work all across the housing continuum, all the way from homelessness to home ownership. I was thrilled to hear in the introductory comments, folks from community action, from housing development, from public housing authorities. Certainly Kenny and Joel are some of our most valued partners. The work that you all are doing around shelters and addressing homelessness, emergency rental assistance, emergency utility assistance, landlord assistance, and the work that you're doing to think about long-term solutions is just invaluable. We're obviously at a crux point now where we're in the middle of crisis response. We are absolutely up to our necks in still reeling from this COVID economic crisis that's hitting communities with all these waves of emergency assistance, and also starting to look ahead at how we capture this moment in time to lay the long-term kind of rebuilding that the state needs to create that new housing supply and those equitable solutions. So that's kind of a little bit about big picture. And now I want to go into some new opportunities and some examples of the kinds of work that we'd like to look at in the Gorge. So next slide, please. Thank you, tech support. So one of the things I wanted to make sure that you are all aware of, and some of you I know are familiar with this program, is the work that we do to provide housing opportunities in Oregon's agricultural worker communities. We administer the Agricultural Workforce Housing Tax Credit. It's a state level tax credit program. I know that Joel's group has taken advantage of these tax credits. This is a financing mechanism that helps us to create housing supply both on farm and in community. And the example here on the slide is Heritage Heights. I think I had the opportunity to go to the grand opening of this particular development in the Dalles. It's a gorgeous development. The need for our agricultural worker communities is significant. We've been pleased to partner with the Oregon Human Development Corporation, which I know has a base in Hood River. Last year, in May, we partnered with the Oregon Department of Agriculture to come up with strategies to support growers and ag worker families to be able to create socially distanced, non-congregate housing opportunities as we approach the harvest season. This was rapid response. Folks really stepped up to create things like motel vouchers, to create alternate housing opportunities. But I think what it just really underlined was that we have a severe dearth of good housing options for our agricultural worker families. And, you know, the COVID crisis, I think, just really underlined that. So we're happy to continue providing these resources. We have been consistently funding these developments in the Gorge each year when we put out these tax credits. And this biennium, in our new 2-year budget, we actually saw an increase in the budget for these tax credits. So that's good news, certainly for your region. We'd love to partner with you on how to deploy those resources. Next slide, please. A particular success story and opportunity for your region is the Local Innovation and Fast Track Housing Program, or LIFT. This is a state bond financed program. We've received significant resources from the legislature for this program, which is to create new affordable housing supply, particularly geared toward family-sized units, which is a significant need in our state, and with an eye toward underserved communities, which is defined in statute as rural communities and communities of color. And so we've been able to do some really exciting work to kind of unlock the development potential in rural Oregon using LIFT, which we pair with federal low-income housing tax credits typically. It's been a game changer for rural Oregon, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done, particularly on the coast. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. Holden Creek Village is a development in, I believe it's in Tillamook. And this is a partnership between OHCS, the Northwest Oregon Housing Authority, and a private development consultant that's creating 60 units in Tillamook County. So I think that's a good model for you all to look at. And as you can see, these developments are just beautiful and can really enhance the quality of housing in communities and have really spurred some beautiful development. Next slide, please. Another example, and this is one that our tech support, Nate Stites, should be familiar with. So we were really proud to work with the governor's office and with Regional Solutions a couple of years ago on a workforce housing initiative. And this was partly in response, this was pre-COVID, to employers talking about the fact that they just did not have the availability of housing. And I know that that's very, very true for the Gorge as well, where there's just not that availability of housing and folks are having to commute long distances to get to work. So this was a unique model where we had the contributions of employers and local governments, as well as the state, to come together with private developers to create kind of that missing middle housing at a higher income level, where folks still weren't able to make deals pencil out with market rate housing, but they didn't quite need the level of subsidy and support of the affordable housing and the LIFT program. So this was a 60-unit development with a local contribution, pro bono, and a reduced rate for professional services, and some flexibilities at the local level. And this is in on the coast. So I believe that this is in what's called Nestucca Ridge. So south of the Cannon Beach area and Manzanita area is my understanding of where this one is located. So this was, again, kind of a workforce on the coast solution that we hope would be replicable going into the future to get employers and local governments involved. Next slide, please. And this one is, as Kenny knows from his time at OHCS, this development is one of my favorites. It is an absolutely gorgeous development in Yachats on the coast. Again, we were able to fund this with LIFT dollars. And as you can see, just an absolutely gorgeous development, extremely high quality, 21 dwelling units and 5 buildings. I would live there tomorrow. I would just, in fact, some days I wish I could just go to Fistera Gardens and just let that wash over me. It's right off of 101. It's 3 blocks from the ocean, and again, really geared, and I think you all can relate to this, to the workforce needs on the coast, where they have a severe labor shortage, a severe lack of housing, and just really needed those unique solutions. So we were proud to be able to participate in funding this and working with private and nonprofit partners to get this one over the finish line. Next slide, please. So now that I've shown you some examples of the kinds of things that we're funding and the kinds of developments and how they can help spur that economic recovery in smaller communities, I want to talk about the path forward. We have a huge opportunity with a nearly $900 million state budget legislative investment. We have considerable federal dollars and state investments all across the housing continuum. And I want to highlight a few places where I think that our investments might be helpful for your community. So next slide, please. I'm not going to go through all of this. This will be a reference slide for you to take a look at, but I want to highlight a few cool, I think really exciting opportunities. So one, I want to talk about sticks and bricks money. We have more dollars for affordable housing development than we've ever seen before. We know it's a drop in the bucket compared to the need, but we're also excited about being able to deploy these funds. two key programs. One is LIFT, which I mentioned, which is really around, again, kind of the workforce, low-income working community members, and family-sized units, and really with partnerships to serve communities of color. So that's one area. The second one is something that Kenny talked about, which is permanent supportive housing. I'm really excited about how this is gaining momentum across the state, that service-enriched housing for folks coming out of chronic homelessness and with multiple health diagnoses to be able to get on their feet with wraparound services and a model that works and saves dollars downstream. So we have new development dollars and rental assistance dollars to tie together to create that kind of permanent supportive housing. The next piece I wanted to highlight for you, kind of halfway down the page here, is land acquisition. And I think that this could be really helpful for your community. This is something I want to actually thank Joel for, because when the Housing Authority Association came to us a few years ago and said, hey, there's a great model in Washington state for land acquisition, Oregon should really look at this. We stepped in and we helped to create kind of a pilot for this program and self-funded it a few years ago. It's been very successful, and now we have significant dollars to deploy, about $30 million for this, which is really exciting, to help nonprofit housing developers and housing authorities be able to acquire land early in the development process and then kind of hold it and get their financing together to get deals over the finish line. We know that sometimes it takes a while for those deals to come to fruition, and this can be really helpful. When we've deployed it previously, we had set-asides for rural communities, and we're looking at doing that again, giving rural communities the first crack at these dollars before opening it up to urban communities. And as you can see here, we also have an increase in the agricultural worker housing tax credit, which we think will be really helpful for your community as well. There's a lot more in here, but I'll go to the next slide. So that's on kind of the sticks and bricks for rental housing development. We also heard Joel talk about home ownership development and home ownership opportunities. We know that there are a lot of folks that are in rental housing that are ready for home ownership, but that down payment is a huge barrier for folks. And so we're looking at strategies to be able to move people up and out of rental housing, which really helps two families. It helps that family get into a home ownership position, but it also opens up that rental unit for that next family that needs it. So a couple of exciting things here. One is we received $20 million for home ownership development, so home ownership supply. You all may be aware that the rental housing development work is kind of a well-oiled machine. It's complex and it takes a lot of funding sources, but there's a lot of federal investment in low-income housing tax credits and other tools to build affordable rental housing. Affordable home ownership supply does not have that level of federal investment. There's never been that kind of really dedicated resource there. So we're excited to have some resources here to help build out home ownership supply, particularly with the lens toward BIPOC homeowners and really leaning into the racial disparities in home ownership. So that's an exciting opportunity. We also have new down payment assistance resources that we are hoping to tie to our own mortgage lending programs. We don't talk about this a lot, but OHCS is also a mortgage lender, and we provide typically below market interest rate loans for first-time home buyers. We're hoping to really expand the reach of our mortgage lending in this time of considerably low interest rates to be able to tie that down payment assistance to get folks opened the door into home ownership. And then there continues to be investment from the legislature on manufactured housing. We know that too many Oregon families and Oregon seniors are residing in aging manufactured homes that need to be not only repaired, but replaced. And we have some new resources to be able to do that, as well as to preserve the long-time affordability of manufactured home parks. Next slide, please. And then finally, on homeless services, our attention today is absolutely on preventing homelessness, because we are still in this COVID crisis and we are laser focused on providing emergency rental assistance. And again, I want to thank folks in your region who've been helping us do that. Certainly Joel with his team actually administering these dollars for the region. And then our friends at the Oregon Human Development Corporation, who've been doing a ton of work on outreach in the Latinx community to make sure folks are aware of those emergency rental assistance dollars. But we still have a homelessness crisis. And this year we did receive dollars for shelter, significant record dollars to help expand shelter capacity and create that dignity for folks, as well as the front door into accessing long-time services and the strategies that we know will work to help folks become stably housed. So that's really, really exciting, and continuing to build out our long-time capacity to address this critical issue. And another bright spot here is, even as we're providing emergency rental assistance, we do have resources to create a long-term rental assistance program for at-risk youth to be able to look beyond today's crisis and really create that sustainable pathway for youth to prevent folks from falling into homelessness and help to break that cycle. Next slide, please. That was a huge amount of information in a short amount of time. So I'd be glad to take any questions, or if folks have follow-ups after today, I'd be glad to have those conversations. I know you all have a lot of other speakers to get to today. So maybe, Kenny, I'll just ask if we want to do questions, or if we should just wrap it, and then we can follow up after today's forum.
Yeah, we can go ahead and wrap it here. We do have time for Q&A at the end. And if Margaret, I know you have a busy schedule, so if you need to leave and if we have questions specifically for you, I can make sure that they get to you.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your leadership at the state level. We appreciate all the resources that you've helped to advocate for in your time as the executive director at Oregon Housing and Community Services. So thanks for being here, and really great to see you.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate all your hard work.
So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Ubaldo Hernandez here to talk about some real life stories. I think we hear a lot about need and a lot about data, and we get into wonky acronym talk a lot of the time, and it's really important that we bring it back to the real people in our community that are impacted by housing instability, by lack of available housing. And Ubaldo definitely has some great stories of how it's impacted. I mean, great as in not great, but good stories to show impact. As to why we need to do more housing development and why we need to lead with equity in our communities here in the Gorge, in the Mid-Columbia region. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Ubaldo.
Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, everybody, for participating today and show interest on this crisis that we have on the Gorge. I just want to mention that Latino community is the largest ethnic community in the Gorge. We are talking about the 6.8% on Iskamania, 11.7% in Cliquita, 19.6% in Wasco, and 31.9% in Hood River. So we are the largest ethnic group, and unfortunately, one of the most underserved communities on the Gorge. So one of the things that Comunidades, which is the group I'm working with, we are the first Latino lead social justice lead group in the Gorge. So we are at this moment having meetings with different groups of the Latino groups of the community, and trying to find out what the needs of the community are, so we can, as an organization in Comunidades, we can assist our community on these needs. One of the biggest issues that we encounter talking to members of the community is housing. Housing has become a really big problem with our community. There is not that much housing available for the Latino community. And one of the biggest problems what we found is that as a community, we were left out to the hands of predatory practices, economic predatory practices by these real estate agencies, companies, that they are really abusing their power and abusing the Latino community. This is one of the sentiments that we recollect with our community when we talk about how much money it costs for a person to move to a new place when they're losing their house, and how much they require for them, like a background check to every member of the community, even if they are underage. They have to pay $50 for each person to do that. They have to do a kind of application payment for each time they can do it. And a lot of times they cannot even access the house because they don't accept kids. They think there is too many people in the family. So all those things that the members of the community, they have to face. Sometimes because they are not, they're gay people, LGBTQ people, they don't have access to the housing because the landlords, they don't think that they deserve that. So this is one of the things that we collect with members of the community. The other thing is, it goes hand on this issue, is housing with dignity. Some of the affordable housing that they have in the area, they act like that they are doing a big favor to families, and they put a lot of restrictions for them to live in these areas. One of the biggest complaints that we have is a place in White Salmon, Rhine Village, where families, they really feel like their rights are violated by the administration, whoever administrates the site, where they cannot even have their kids playing outside in the playgrounds without a supervision of an adult, when there's only time kids can go out and parents probably can do some of the housekeeping work. And when this happens, they constantly hear that supervisors of the ground, they come and knock on the door to tell them that if this thing happen, they will lose their house. So, and that's one example of the many things that they claim about how they've been treated in places where they offer affordable housing. So also, one other thing is, I see a lot of work that's been done to solve some of these issues with affordable housing in the community, but not much of that information goes to the Latino community. One other thing is, probably it's not that there is not been translated to Spanish, but the thing is, it's not being directed to the Latino community, because you can translate, but if you don't intentionally translate that to reach the Latino community, it will never get to the community, and the community will never have access to the information or those services. So the other thing, that talking to members of the community, people feel like they have the right to live where they work. A lot of times, houses rents are increasing, and we have information from some members of the community that rents are increasingly too much, that they can't afford anymore on places they've been living for over a decade. So they have to move, and they have to move farther from where they work. So that increase the cost of gasoline, time they spend on the road, time that they do not spend with their family. So that decrease the quality of life of members of the community, especially the Latino community, that they need to move farther so they can find places that can afford. And that's one of the things that we were getting information. The other thing is, they want a system that they really support them to overcome poverty, not to perpetuate on this situation. One of the things that I heard from members of the community is that when they have access to some of those affordable housing, but when they get a raise, also the rent goes up, and they feel like it's not good for them because they can't save the money to overcome this situation, poverty. They can't really provide more benefits to their family with the money they're making, because they have to pay their own rent. So there goes clothing, food, quality food, school stuff, and all the needs that our community have. And one of the most important things, I would like to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the undocumented community, which is a big community, and nobody wants to talk about it. last year or over a year ago, I was on a meeting where the governor, Jay Inslee, talked to the Latino community, and he recognized that undocumented immigrants pay taxes and they don't access services in our communities, and that's not fair. And this is one of the truths that we have. Everybody in this country pay taxes. Undocumented immigrants pay taxes. Nobody escapes that. And immigrant documents don't get services. This is one of the things that if we want to overcome poverty in our communities, we have to pay attention in that fact that there is a lot of undocumented communities that they deserve those services because they work in these communities, they pay taxes, they have their family here, and they produce wealth for this community. So this is one of the things that we want to emphasize to these groups, that they're working into helping our communities to overcome this housing crisis and overcome poverty. Don't forget about the undocumented community, which we are a big part of this community. We produce, we work, we pay taxes. Everybody in this country pay taxes. And this is one of the things that I want to make emphasis, because I see a lot of politicians that they play with this issue. They don't want to recognize that. They don't want to acknowledge that everybody in this country pays taxes, and so is the undocumented community. And we, the undocumented community, as a community, we pay taxes. We pay our dues to live in this country, to serve of these communities. We apport economically to these communities. So it's important to have that in mind when we try to help our community to overcome poverty, and in this case, affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ubaldo, and thank you for your advocacy. And if you could put your contact info, could all the presenters as they go put their contact info in the chat box so folks who are attending here know how to get a hold of us, that would be great. So thank you, Ubaldo.
Hello,
with
Kenny.
that, I am, yes.
Hello, Kenny. I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is Juan Aguilar. I was invited to be part of this meeting and with Deborah Whitefoot talk a little bit about the Wishram project. I just want to let you know that I'm here, and when you have me in the queue, I'll start.
Great, thank you, Juan. I'm about to kick it over to Deborah, who's gonna introduce you. So thanks for leading me into that. So with that, I will kick it to Deborah Whitefoot. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone that is here to be at this roundtable. My name is Deborah Whitefoot. I'm the Executive Director of Inchiwana Housing. We are an emerging and new nonprofit in the Columbia Gorge to address housing and community development for the Native population living along the Columbia River. And so the last roundtable, I did mention some of the obligations of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to replace housing that was inundated by the dams. So that's still there. What I want to talk about, what we're doing here at Inchiwana Housing, I'll talk a little bit about, we're pretty much a brand new program. We're still waiting for our 501c3 status. We're currently being fiscally sponsored by NAYA, Native American Youth and Families out of Portland. So I want to kind of make this short so Juan can talk about Wishram, but I do want to mention a few things here, that what we're doing currently is we're connecting the Native population to the services that the wonderful providers that are in the circle, such as WAGAP, MCCAC, Kenny's program, and Joel. We're learning about connecting our Native population to those programs, because for so many years there has been a disconnect. So some of the things that we are doing is we're building partnerships with the service providers in the community, so that the Native people, so that our workers can learn how to connect them to those services. While we're building these partnerships, we're learning about and addressing systemic barriers to access to services. What we're finding is that there is not equitable delivery for services to the Native American, maybe because they need cultural competency. Maybe they need to just be aware of it. that there are barriers that the Native people face in accessing the services. So what Inchiwana Housing is doing is we've gotten some agreements with the programs that are here, and we're going to have some outreach workers. Outreach workers are going to learn how about accessing these programs, and so that we can help our people access them. So a little bit about the Wish Ramp project. I used to work for Yakima Nation Housing Authority before taking on this project of developing a nonprofit in the Gorge. There was a project called the Dallas Port that I was working on the last few years. That project was slated to be 66 units. It was a low-income housing tax credit project. It did not go through due to some environmental issues that came up, but there were also, and I know this happens in every community, some not in my backyard issues. People face things that they don't want affordable housing in their backyard, although it does benefit the community, as we all know. Washington State Housing Finance Commission held over those credits, and we are able to, Yakima Nation Housing Authority was able to go forward with the Wish Ramp project. And so I knew Juan Aguilar in my prior works with Office of Rural Farm Worker Housing, a housing development nonprofit. And Juan was on the Asset Building Coalition. So Juan then came to Yakima Nation Housing Authority after I had left. And so Juan and I did not get to work together, although we still do a lot of communication. So with that, I want to introduce to you Juan Aguilar, who is a grant writer for Yakima Nation Housing Authority, who has so graciously continued to work on housing development for the Native population. Yakima Nation Housing Authority is a tribally designated housing entity funded by NAHASDA. They have currently 7, now 8 low-income housing tax credit projects. So with that, Juan, if you want, I'm going to give the mic over to you. And I do have a picture of the development, a layout. If someone would let me share screen, I can do that while Juan is talking. Thank you. You're on mute, Juan.
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much, Deborah, for the introduction. And hello to all of the participants at this meeting. I came in at the tail end of Mr. Hernandez's presentation. It sounded like it was pretty invigorating, pretty much on target as to not to leave anyone behind, especially the low-income farm worker families and even undocumented families. It is so true, even though you are undocumented, you do pay taxes and you do contribute to the economy of the community as a consumer. So I think that Ubaldo is on track, and we need to be mindful that we need to look at all of our citizens, documented or undocumented, that live and work in Washington State and in the communities that we serve. So yes, I joined the Yakima Nation Housing Authority in February of 2020, and I got indoctrinated pretty quick into their needs and how they approach housing. And they have had a very ambitious plan over the years. In 1963, through the Yakima Nation and the Tribal Council, they became chartered to be a housing authority, a tribally designated entity, and quickly began to create an inventory of mostly rental low-income housing. We have about 527 units all around the Yakima Nation reservation and on the perimeter, probably serve about 2,500 families, probably 800 or so are children of school age, K to K-12. And for years, Since its inception, the Yakima Nation Housing Authority has been wanting to do something to create affordable housing for the mostly homeless fishermen and fishermen families along the Columbia River on the Oregon and Washington side with the Cielito Village and so forth. And as Deborah mentioned, without being repetitive, they purchased the site first outside of the Dallas, Oregon, Dallas port. And it turned out to have wetland issues, and we could not build the 66 homes there and really make the project worthwhile and make it affordable housing. And besides, it turns out that the community didn't welcome the Native American community, which is a sad story in itself. But we moved on and we went over to what is now Wishram and purchased 18 acres to be able to construct 46 homes. 45 of those homes are for the homeless families and Yakima Nation tribal members that live anywhere within Washington state to become the residents of those homes. The 46 unit is going to be the site manager unit, but it's a total of 45, as you can see on the picture there. I believe it even shows a photo of a community center, which is also in the plans, but it'll be started after the construction of the 46 homes. We got a late start in the construction of these units because we didn't close the procurement of the 18 acres until latter part of March. And then by the time we got revved up, it was April 26th when we started the actual excavation and digging out the lots and start the pouring and then the framing and start the build up. Between now and the end of December, we do have to have at least 6 or 8 units built. At the middle of the project, I can't see the numbers here, but at the middle road, where the horseshoe is in the middle, are the 4 units that we started, and then we kind of go around and we've excavated and we're pouring 32 homes right now. We hope to have 4 or 6 units completed by the end of December, 2 and 4 bedroom units. And then in 2022, January to the end of December, we're really going to rev up because we are behind schedule. It's a low-income housing tax credit project. So we have timelines that we have to meet or we're out of compliance. We should have all 46 units completed. And in the meantime, we're qualifying the tenants of these units, and we do that through the eligibility to be a renter process, which is a process that the Yakima Nation Housing Authority has well in place. And it's driven by income, no more than 50% area median income, and family size, and so forth, and prove and prove all your capabilities or ability to be able to renter. We're using Deborah Whitefoot to help us in identifying the fishermen and fishermen families as well. So she's been a real asset to us because she has a history along the river, and we want to be able to create, affordable housing for these tribal members that elect and choose to live along the Columbia River. It's been their home for millennia. It's all they do. It's all they want to do, and it's a seasonal employment or business. And but hopefully, once they get settled and get into permanent housing, we can start really looking at addressing year-round employment and business centered around the Columbia River and the salmon fishing industry. That's why we want to also do the community center so that we can do training and so that we can do have a shell of a building to create maybe a cannery and have them can salmon, have the ability through ovens and so forth to jerky salmon. And the cannery would be to can salmon and make salmon chowder and have it so that it's marketed and sold locally, regionally, statewide, and even nation and international wide. So that's going to be a big, tall order, but it'll be a starting process for these fishermen who have been basically homeless for 70 years at least when the Corps of Engineers started to dam up the Columbia River and promised to relocate them and promised to make them whole. And that unfortunately has not happened, but that's not the reason why we're there. It's just the timing is right for the Yakima Nation to start to address housing more to the south and be able to address the tribes that live and work along the Columbia River. And actually, it's the Yakima Nation, and it's the Warm Springs, the Umatillas, and the Nez Perce are the tribes that qualify to work and live along the Columbia River, and that we want to provide housing for them. And it'll be part of the economic stimulus because all of you folks are looking into doing housing and really growing the Columbia Gorge area and the Columbia River. As I see it from Portland to Hood River, the Dalles, Biggs in the Umatilla, all along the Columbia River where it bends to the Tri-Cities. All of that eventually can be and will be developed, and it will be a major economic hub for those areas. It's a beautiful site, as you all know, the Columbia River. It's touristy. There are things that are already there now. The Sam Hill Museum, Stonehenge, the river boats that go up and down the Columbia River, the fishing, wineries, concerts, great Carlos Santana concerts, by the way. And so it's developing and it's coming about. And I hope that all of us collectively can be part of this whole process to really make an economic engine that will really drive that whole area, which is beautiful. And I can't say enough about that. It can be a destination, has a railway, railroad system, and so forth. So we can do some great things, and there's room for everybody. Nosotros los mexicanos también podemos existir alrededor del río Columbia y también somos pescadores, tenemos también esa disciplina y podemos hacer muchas cosas juntos. Ubaldo, you can translate if you want a little bit later. But in any event, I hope that we can forge and continue this collaboration from the Native American community, the indigenous community, Mexicanos, Mexican Americans are indigenous people too, although we're not tribal. But we got Deborah and we got others. I see Lucille Begay and some others maybe that are also part of the registered or strongly affiliated with the Indian nations of the state of Washington or other places. I think that together we can do a lot of good work and really make some really good things happen. That was kind of the hybrid presentation. There's a lot of detail, a lot of things go on, a lot of things that that are a nuisance, that are not working really well. The pandemic has been hard on anyone, especially home builders, with the shutting down of construction materials facilities and the sale of construction materials are hard to come by. When you do find them, they're real expensive. No vendor will hold a quote for very long, because as the price changes for them, they change it for everyone else. So that's a very hard road to hoe, but we navigate through it, and then we'll just make the best of it that we can, and we will complete our projects. So I thank you very much, and I'll be glad to entertain any questions or any comments. Deborah, I hope I didn't embarrass you by my short presentation.
Thank you so much, Juan. We appreciate you being here. Go ahead, Deborah.
I just wanted to say this, no, Juan, you didn't embarrass me, but I just wanted to thank everybody here. And I'm happy to know that there are other affordable housing projects going up, that Joel and Kenny are working towards this. And, you know, we have so much more to say. I have so much more to say, but I know we're on a time restraint. And so with that, I'm gonna turn it back over to Kenny. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks to both of you for your great work on the Wishroom project. So it is great to see additional housing coming to the region. So we're really excited about that, and great presentation. Really appreciate it. And we will, Juan, if you can hang out, we may have questions later on. We have a Q&A section a little bit later. But with that, I'm going to kick it over to Joel Madsen, who I believe is still on, who will be doing our next interview portion. So Joel, it's all yours.
Thanks, Kenny. So I get the opportunity to kick off some interview questions with a couple of local elected officials that we have with us this afternoon. We have Commissioner Dave Sauter from Klickitat County and Commissioner Kathy Schwartz from Wasco County. And Kathy, I guess I'm going to start with you. Can you share with us, why is affordable housing important to you, and tell us a little bit about what motivates you to address this issue, particularly in your role as a Wasco County Commissioner?
Thank you, Joel. I hope you'll indulge me just a second to actually answer, why is this important to Wasco County right now? But also, I wanted to just tell a couple personal stories. So those of you that don't know me, prior to becoming a commissioner, as a public health nurse, and there were some things that happened in that previous career that has really fueled my passion for housing, and I'm particularly wanted to follow up on Nibaldo's presentation, and just a couple experiences I'll share with you that have stayed with me throughout my career and now as a county commissioner. I was working for the county as a public health nurse, as I mentioned, and I was working alongside a community health worker who was from Mexico. She had a good job, good benefits. Her husband worked at the hospital, good job, good benefits. And I'll never forget when she asked me to go along with her while she interviewed for a place to live. And I asked her, why do I need to go with you? And she said, well, because you're white. And I need you there. Just you being with me will help me get this home that I need. She didn't ask me to sign anything, or it was just, you just need to come with me. And that what made a huge impact. And also as a public health nurse, my job for many, many years was visiting pregnant immigrant women, mostly from South America and Mexico, in their homes. And most of them were newly immigrated, undocumented, working in agriculture. And I'd lived in this community for a really long time. And I'd driven roads for 25 years in the Dalles. And when I started doing home visits, I was shocked at where people were living. I called them kind of the invisible homes. You don't see them when you drive quickly by, but when you're actually looking for people and looking where people were living in substandard housing, it was shocking. So those are just a couple stories I wanted to share, and why I am passionate about housing and always wanting to learn more about what we can do as a government. So now I'll go into a little more of the government speak. So why is affordable housing important? Certainly right now, when I drive down the streets of downtown The Dalles or in the outskirts, there's a lot of help wanted signs that I see. And most of those, at least that are really visible to me, are in the service industry, retail industry, and those tend to be minimum wage jobs. And for whatever reason, folks are having trouble filling those jobs locally. I'm sure you've all read about the many reasons why people aren't stepping up for, to take these jobs. But at some point, we need folks to maybe come into our communities and take those jobs. But one of our barriers is we don't have affordable housing for those folks to move to. So that really is going to be a barrier for any economic growth in our community. And I think that housing is really a building block for economic growth. I think that's certainly recognized by our Mid-Columbia Economic Development District has it as a definite building block in their strategic plan, that we need housing to grow our businesses for sure. And another reason why it's really important is to me right now is, I'm also serving on the Mayor's Coalition for Houselessness, certainly along with Kenny and others as citizens, as well as St. Vincent de Paul, kind of a coalition to address, the problem of, people, becoming homeless in our community and more. And I think it's just really important to recognize that, folks that are living here are just one emergency away from becoming houseless. And we need to recognize that in government and try to do, what we can to address that. So I think, and I think just some stats that Joel gave me, I'm just not gonna, you've had a lot of statistics, but really right here in Wasco County, we are about 400 units short of what we need for affordable housing. And I think you all know the affordable housing definition, which is really the low income housing that we need. So I think that's what I wanted to share about your first question, Joel. Sorry if I didn't want to take all that time from Dave.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We'll come back to you here in a minute too. So Commissioner Sauter, similarly, why is affordable housing important to you as a county commissioner in Quickstart County?
Thanks for the question, Joel. Although I don't thank you for the order, since Kathy took most of my talking. And just a point of reference, Kathy and I both serve on local housing authority board, so we know each other well. As to the question is why is it important to me? Well, it's maybe a little bit about my background before I was in local government, which was new. I'm actually in my 4th term as a county commissioner, but I had no elected government experience prior to that at all. I was born and raised here in the Gorge. Actually, I was born in White Salmon, and so I have been here my whole life. But my former career I was a home builder. And so I have always had an affinity to construction and home building and providing shelter for people. And so, on a personal level, why, housing is important, because I just think that it is that building block that folks need affordable, stable, decent housing. That is the foundation of our communities. And there is, and I'll talk a little bit later about kind of economic development strategy with it too, but it's at its very base, it's as a human being, people need shelter. And if we want to have healthy, vibrant communities, people have to have someplace to live, and that they can afford, that they are not stressed out about either their rent or mortgage payment, or that they're going to get evicted, or that they're going to get found and and have to leave. And so we may think we want to have communities of, high-end, affluent, that these will be wonderful communities. They're not. Healthy communities are diverse, balanced communities that have the full spectrum of housing in them, because I think that's what we need. That's what a community really is. So on a personal level, that's why it's important to me. As a commissioner, kind of with my commissioner hat, I can look back to, we updated our strategic economic plan. We started in 2016, Klickitat County did, and it's something we do a look back about every 10. It actually been almost 20 years since we've done it. We updated it, and across our whole county, the #1 issue as an impediment to economic development in the region was affordable housing. And that was across all communities. And if you know Klickitat County, it's a very diverse county, both in politics and in climate. And, it's long and narrow. And this was in every single community, the more urban centers and the rural communities. It was the #1 thing. And so we have put a lot of effort into trying to figure out a way to solve that problem. And so that's why it's important to me as a commissioner.
And that's a perfect segue. We'll stick with you for a second. So share a little bit more, if you would, about what Klickitat County is actually doing to help address the issue of affordable housing, if you would.
Yes. Well, I think first and foremost, we need to not, like, we focus so much on the negative and the problem, which I understand that, but we have a lot of successes too across. We do have projects. I did do a little checking because I was kind of curious. First off, we need to, kind of have a definition as far as what's affordable. And in Klickitat County, to just give some perspective, 80% median income is about $56,000, $57,000. So that's not a super high number when you're looking at the housing prices. So that sort of illustrates the problem. But what we're doing, as far as some successes, we do have programs in place where we have our the housing program where we're providing, rental assistance to folks. There's 204, Joel probably has these all memorized, about 240 families in Klickitat County. It's about $150,000 a month is going out in rental assistance for these housing choice voucher program. We can't forget that. That's a huge success, and we need to celebrate that, even though it's, we have a lot more of an issue going on. So one of the things that we have done is that it came out in the strategic plan is that we contracted for a buildable land survey, which we did in targeted regions of the county to just kind of have an understanding of what land was available, just so it could kind of inform decision makers with our partners, the cities, the ports, and everybody about where we needed to focus either infrastructure investments. Did we need to look at kind of regulatory change as far as zoning, places that, what are the impediments? And then we also had a lot of interviews with industry folks as far as builders like myself, bankers, finance people, to kind of understand what's the problem? Why is it this seems like a problem? And it's hard for me as someone that's a bricks and mortar guy. It's like, well, let's just go out and fix this. And so I get super frustrated when it's like, well, gee, we've identified a problem. Let's come up with a solution and let's just go implement it. And that's been a struggle for me in government, that's not exactly how we do things. But so that's what we're doing, is that we as a county government are putting resources into first gathering data so that we can understand kind of what the problem is and where we can apply the levers that we have, because there's not enough money in the world to just write a check and fix the problem. It's not gonna get fixed that way. It's gonna get fixed by collaboration with a whole bunch of partners. Otherwise, the problem is just too big.
Thanks for sharing. I know there are other things that Klickitat County is doing too that will maybe come up in the Q&A, but I do want to give Commissioner Schwartz a couple minutes here. And also, we had committed to providing at least some time for Q&A before 1:30. So Commissioner Schwartz, if I may ask you to keep your remarks succinct, but please do let us know.
Sorry, Captain.
And thank you, Commissioner Sutter, for sharing what Klickitat County is up to. But please share a couple things about what is Wasco County doing to help address this regionally recognized issue of affordable housing.
Yeah, thank you. I will be succinct. Just as Dave mentioned, I am on the Housing Authority Board. Wasco County is part of that regional housing authority. And actually, I like to think of it as our housing authority, that we are it and it is us. And I am chair currently of that board. And in that role, I like to think that I advocate for housing issues with the other commissioners. And just as a recent example, I did encourage the board this last year to utilize what we have in Oregon as statutory authority to hold back on some foreclosed properties that would have normally gone to auction. And we were able to sell that to the nonprofit arm of the housing authority for them to redevelop into affordable housing at some point. So, so that's one very recent example of something that Wasco County has done. Also, I do sit on the Mid-Columbia Community Action Board, and I'm very involved with Kenny in developing, hopefully in the planning stages of developing a affordable housing unit here in the Dalles. I've lived here a long time, and I hope that I give Kenny good counsel about, the community and where best we might look to, put that unit. And I really am looking forward in the future to having more discussions with my board on how, certainly we got a lot of information, not only from Dave, but also from the state on what resources are out there that we might want to take advantage of. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much for sharing. And again, Commissioner Sauter and Commissioner Schwartz, thanks for being advocates within both Klickitat and Wasco County for this important issue for the region. So, and for sharing your personal stories around why it's so important to you. Kenny, I'm gonna pass it back to you.
Oh, wait a minute, you're not gonna get away so quickly. I really, there was another question, and this one is really important, and I wanna be sure to have just 30 seconds to answer it if you don't mind, but it was really about how can people engage in this issue with county government? And I really want to impress upon the group here. First, thank you all for coming and being, interested in this topic and being willing to help us. It is really important that you show up and talk to us about your concerns about housing in Wasco County. I'll speak for me in Wasco County. Please don't ever underestimate the power of citizens coming and talking to us about an issue that's important to them. It's very easy. We're all on Zoom. It's a very unintimidating experience. I'll put the link in the chat on how you can find our meetings. We often have we always have public comment where you can come and talk to us about anything of interest to you or of concern to you. And better yet, if you have ideas of what you'd like us to do, please share those as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Appreciate those comments. And I will add to Kathy's comments and just say, if you see discussions around affordable housing development, around issues around houselessness that are coming up on county commission agendas or city council agendas, and you want to make sure that your voice is heard and you have the opportunity to weigh in, please come in for public comment, or if it's on the agenda, join the discussion then and voice your support for the work that's going on, so that our elected officials know that the community is behind this, because often the only ones who show up are the ones who want to douse it. So if you can show up and join forces with us as we go to those meetings of elected officials, we could really use your support in that forum. So with that, I'm gonna kick off the Q&A portion of this. We have about 9 minutes, and I wanna make sure you all get out of here on time. But I'll open it up for folks. If you have questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat or just go ahead and raise your hand. And I see Alice's hand.
Hi, I just wanted to add another part to Commissioner Schwartz's resume, and that is that she serves on the Urban Renewal Agency in the Dalles. And that particular agency, one of the areas of focus both for our council and our Urban Renewal Agency is to build more housing units in our downtown and to make that downtown more of a neighborhood than it is today. And invariably that will include some affordable units. So she's working at it and she's doing more than she says. So thank you for your leadership, Commissioner.
Thanks, Alice. For those of you who don't know Alice, Alice is the planning director for the city of the Dalles and has been a great help for, at least for us, as we look to do affordable housing development, and I know for others as well. Do others have questions, comments? Feel free to just jump off of mute, and it's hard for me to toggle between multiple screens and see if anybody's actually physically raising their hand in the room. So feel free to just come off mute. Mayor McBride. I'm having trouble hearing.
My earphones out. Is that better?
There you go.
Okay. Thank you everyone for participating. Thanks for leading the discussion, Kenny. I just wanted to mention one thing that Hood River's done, and it's to put a limit on short-term rentals. And I believe White Salmon was looking at that. I don't know if other communities have looked at it or are thinking about looking at it, but it was one of the first strategies we had. We felt like prior to either densifying or adding more of any kind of additional housing, if it went to short-term rentals, it wasn't for the locals, affordable or not affordable. It was something that was used part-time, and it was for the tourist industry, yes, but it was a commercial use in a residential zone. So we put in some stringent regulations about it. And so if anyone is having issues with that or is thinking about the possibility of that is an issue or becoming an issue, get a hold of me and I can kind of run you through what we did, and it might be something you're interested in.
Thank you, Mayor McBride. I will note that I just posted a survey about this event. If you could all take the time and complete the survey, it's pretty short, just so we make sure that these events are beneficial to you all in the future. We're providing information that's useful to you. If you could complete that, that would be great. And then Sarah, thanks for the question about the PowerPoint. We will make sure that all the materials from this event are available to everyone. We also have been recording, so that will also be posted. If you were not able to participate in the first roundtable, that event has also been recorded and is available on the WAGAP site. When we send out the materials from this event, we will also make sure that you have a link to that so you can see where the events have been recorded and available, because I know a lot of folks ask about it. Is there any other questions or comments from folks? If none, oh, I see Dan has raised his hand.
Thank you, Kenny. Just a reminder to everyone on the workforce training side, if you know of people who would like to gain skills in the construction industry, certainly an important component of being able to meet this challenge, the college does have a program now, construction technology, on the Dalles campus. We also have affordable student housing in the Chinook Residence Hall. So keep a couple of resources in mind there. I'd be happy to follow up with anyone. I'll put my email in the chat box.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Not seeing any other hands raised or questions. So with that, I think we can wrap up our event here today. Again, if you can take the time to go complete that survey, I'll note that Tammy Kaufman has also posted a link to the prior event recording. So you can go listen to that as well. I think we've had a great discussion today about some things that we can do as a community to bring more affordable housing to the region. Director Salazar from Oregon Housing and Community Services talked about some resources available. I think I wanted to really make sure that you all got to see a glimpse of what affordable housing looks like in its completion. And Director Salazar gave a great example, Heritage Heights, one of those examples. Thanks to Joel's organization for work on that project. We have some other great projects that are in the mix, and we've got Wishram that is up and going, getting worked on, and then we've got a couple other developments happening in the region as well. So there is work happening. So as Commissioner Sauter said, it's all not negative stuff. The negative is why we're doing the positive. So it's why we're getting stuff done, and we want to make sure that this issue remains front and center for everyone, because it's impacting everyone from school teachers to children to folks with physical health conditions to our workforce. And we need to make sure that this stays front and center so we continue to bring housing opportunities to the residents of the Mid-Columbia region. So with that, thank you all for participating. We appreciate you being here. I think you have contact information for the panelists, as well as myself. So if you need to get a hold of us, you know how to. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.